Good afternoon, and for the handful or so of folks that have already joined us prior to the 3 o'clock start time, hang in there. We'll probably give a few extra minutes past 3 o'clock for folks to join, and then we will get going. So hang in for a couple more minutes. Thank you. I have 1 minute past 3 o'clock. I want to welcome those of you that have joined. Going to give just another minute or two for a few stragglers that normally join us a minute or two late. Just a reminder to have your cameras and microphones off so that everybody can focus on the presentation once we get started. So I will come back on in a minute or two and we'll get rolling. Thank you. All right, it is now 3 minutes after, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Don't want to wait too much longer for a few extra participants. They can just pick up when they join in and gain whatever content they can. So really excited about today's forum. I know I am personally. Part 2 of our change management series, of our 3-part change management series. So we're getting to the halfway point of our series here. I hope you were able to join us for the first part, and that you're planning to join us again in February for part 3, so that you're gaining all of the little nuggets that we're getting here about change management from some of our great speakers. And today we have, if I can get the slide to advance, there we go. Today we have Brad McKinney from the Employment Department. Not only am I personally excited about the work that his team is doing to modernize our employment department here in Oregon. Really excited to have him here talking to us about change management, his experience in the private sector, and the work that he's doing now in the public sector for us is pretty stellar. And so I'm excited to hear what he's got to say about change management and all of the learning that he's got to bring to us. So with that, Brad, I will hand it off to you and you can take it from here.
Thank you. Just get my presentation going here. I think I gotta have you stop sharing so I can share. Perfect. Everyone able to see the PowerPoint?
Yep, I see it.
Awesome.
And I'm seeing thumbs up everywhere. So yep, they can see it.
So I was thinking I could monitor the chat and read my notes and all of the things with 2 screens, but I am limited to that. So if you have questions, please just either speak up or if you type them in the chat. I think Tim and Winnie will be monitoring that and will let me know. Actually, let me turn on my video so you can see me. Appreciate everyone here. My presentation today, I think, is right about that hour time frame, and a lot of me talking about our modernization program before we get into the content of why is organizational change management important for business analysts. I wanted to give a little bit about me because I know it's important to understand, like, why should we listen to this person? What experience they have? So I figured I'd go a little bit over some of that information. I didn't step into the world of project management or business analysis. I really stumbled into it with not a lot of education formally, just sort of tossed into the deep end. So it seems like forever ago, but in college, I and a partner built a mid-sized trucking company, ultimately to pay for our college, which was fun. We grew that from 5 trucks to 25 trucks over a 3-year period. It was a fun project, but afterwards I graduated college and went on to the insurance industry where I hung out for a decade in mostly claims. I did sell insurance for a hot minute, but I did not. I found out very quickly I am not a salesperson. So most of my time was in management, and I bring that up because I was a lead on one of a large enterprise technology project called Service Power. Where we brought this hardware and software implementation to Oregon, and we really transformed how our auto damage claims representatives work their claims. So when I started, they had a very autonomous claims environment where they scheduled all of their time, and we moved that into a dispatched program where their cars were outfitted with GPS units, which interacted with their dispatching software and our claim software. So our dispatchers in Oklahoma City would be able to identify what claims representative was closest to vehicles and be able to dispatch them faster. It was obviously it's sounding very transformational. It was very very cool, the efficiencies and the customer service that was gained by being able to handle those claims faster. After that stint in the insurance, I decided to completely change environments and go into the web design, development, and advertising realm, where I spent some time working as a web division manager for an international medical supply company. So I worked with manufacturers in China, Malaysia, and Taiwan doing product development. And then we would import those products into the US and sell them through their online sales channels. A lot of project management in the development of those products, as well as working with both international laws, so laws in other countries, as well as import-export laws of the US. So gain a lot of knowledge around red tape. So then I moved to the state of Oregon, where I've been here for 5 years. I started in child welfare, DHS Child Welfare Division, and then moved to the Oregon Employment Department, where I've spent most of my public sector career. So I don't have a lot of formal education in project management or business analysts or business analysis or management. Most of it is just kind of hanging out in the deep end of the pool and figuring things out, when for the most part, I didn't really have any idea what I was doing. but learned a few things along the way. With that, I am currently the business team manager on our Oregon Employment Department Modernization Program. Right now, we are currently working on our UI project, which includes paid family medical leave contributions and benefits. I'm going to tell a little bit about this project because wow, this is a long project and has a lot of different areas and has gone through a lot of adversity along the way. So we're going to talk a little bit about where we are in the project, kind of that adversity, the things that we're working through, and the things that we have worked through up to and including where we are now in our implementation. So Oregon's UI modernization project is part of a larger program. It's intended to charter multiple projects over many years. So if you look at the timeline there, 2017 is when we really started our RFP and then moved into the planning stage. And then we're scheduled to go out as far as 2025. So there's a long project scheduled to do, a long program scheduled to do many projects. Our focus is, when we started, was modernizing agencies' UI and employment services systems and business processes. This graphic does really show where we are today. So that lighter section is what's been done, and then like the faded in section is where we still need to go. Puts in context how long we planned and prepared for the UI project and the estimated time remaining. Our project is unique, really unique. We've run into a lot of challenges along the way. Sorry, technology. I think that was the right slide. Let me make sure. All right, so we had a few organizational challenges. The first one, I don't know if any of you have read the news, but there was a global pandemic that started in March of 2020. If you look in on that project timeline, you can see in 2020 there, it looks like we're right in the middle of our stage gate 3, our planning stage. But realistically, when the pandemic happened, we were close to the end of our planning stage and about to go into implementation. We also were gifted the opportunity to stand up a new program called Paid Family Medical Leave Insurance at an organizational level. And these two things kind of happening simultaneously in our organization has caused a little bit of busyness and different challenges, which I'll talk about here in just a little bit. As far as project challenges, along the way, about that same time as the pandemic started in 2020, as a project, our entire leadership turned over. So we got a new director, a new deputy director, a new technical team manager, and then a little bit down the road, I replaced our business team manager who retired, and then we added on our OCM manager. So really, as we were kicking off our implementation or kind of working through the end of our planning stage and going into implementation, we started over with our leadership team. So the pandemic did a few things. It disrupted our staff. So as 2020 happened, our agency turned their focus from working to push forward on modernization to responding to the enormous workload of claims that came through from the pandemic. In March of 2020, our agency hired and onboarded over 1,000 people to meet the needs of that incoming volume, which as those hiring efforts were going on, it really furthered the challenge of us being able to hire anyone for our modernization team, especially in our IT resources. And then not as far as hiring challenges, the other challenges were we had just brought on our business analyst team, and then they quickly got redeployed back to their previous positions to help out with that workload. Since most of our team was working remote, as that influx of employees came in, we had to share our space, and so they quickly set up call centers in our two working areas, which kept our team remote throughout pretty much the entire 2020 to late 21. Normally, we would have had a code freeze right before modernization to protect for risk. However, during the pandemic, our code freeze was more like a code slushy. Over the past 18 months, we've continued to significantly modify our code, even throughout our implementation, mostly to support changes to existing systems to be able to handle the increased volume, as well as when we added new programs such as PUA, the pandemic assisted unemployment, and the subsequent programs that came in after that. And so as a pandemic response, we added that capability and we added new systems. We did emergency procurements and IT, and business resources were fully consumed by pandemic workloads. So we really, what we thought we were, like our current state was not. It changed very rapidly in a very short period of time. So as we moved into implementation, there were a lot of updating of our current state understanding. The big part, or the big scope change for our project, which we'll talk about here next, is our paid family medical leave insurance. As they came in, I have a little bit different timeline to talk about paid family medical leave. But in 2019, the Oregon legislature directed the department to establish a paid family medical leave insurance program. Our contributions to the paid family medical leave trust fund will start in January 1, 2022. We have a really cool clock on our team here that says there's 264 days until we roll out, and then a few months after that is when we're going to start collecting contributions for paid family medical leave insurance. And then folks will be available for benefits by January 1 of 2023. So as we initiated the planning for this new program when the bill was created. The bill mandated that paid family medical leave should leverage existing state infrastructure whenever possible. So they kind of folded into our already going project because it would help shorten that timeline to implementation. As we look at, as our agency looked at the two programs, my team met with our paid family medical leave team, and we helped them build out their requirements based on what we had already done with UI. And these programs were so connected that once we went through each requirement for the programs, they were so similar that we only added 3 additional requirements to allow for the paid family medical leave program, which is really cool because like it fit in really well with what we were already doing, but it did give us a very hard date on the timelines that we're trying to hit for our rollout 1 and rollout 2, and we'll talk about those 2 rollouts here in just a few minutes. The modernization team, so sorry, my technology today is a challenge for me. So as we look at the work happening remotely, so right now when we're working with paid family, their team's completely remote. Our team has sort of a hybrid model going on. And so when we're working and folding the paid family medical leave project into ours, we have one program, which is UI, that's been established for a really long time, decades. And then we have paid family that's really working towards building their program, their processes, their procedures, everything that we're going to need for development. And they're kind of doing it on the fly. So they're building their plane while we're flying it, which is making it a kind of bigger challenge because although we are really aligned, there are areas where we're not as similar, and we're trying to work through those unified solution, because when we're done, we're going to have one system that will have the capability to help pick or basically do the work for both programs. So our vendor that we're working with is Fast Enterprises. We kicked off our rollout 1, so for UI tax and paid family contributions on July 6th. And we are a few months into the project. Right now we have just completed our definitions phase, moving into our development phase. It's very exciting. As we're setting up this meeting here today, most of my team would likely be on this call. However, they're in another meeting, which helps, I guess, with my nerves. Yeah, so we're kind of rolling into the next phase of rollout 1, and we're scheduled to go live on September 6th of 2022. And then we're going to move right into rollout 2, where we're going to be working on our UI benefits, or unemployment insurance benefits, and paid family medical leave insurance benefit solutions, which starts in September of 22 and then moves. There's actually 2 rollouts. There's a rollout 1 for benefits for paid family in September of 23, and then unemployment insurance goes live in March of 24. So we kind of have a two rollouts within rollout 2 go live dates. So my team is currently living why OCM is important to business analysts. Our team is discussing, negotiating, and implementing change across the board. We've got these 2 very unique programs that we're bringing together, right? One with, this is the way we've always done it, and one with a very fresh look on how things could be as we move forward, and moving and melting those together into one system has created some challenges, really got us in a place where we're needing to think differently about even the UI processes as we're trying to merge these 2 programs together. In our definitions, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of collaboration to get to where we need to be. The really cool thing is we have an incredible business analyst team. Makes me proud to come to work every day and watch them work. So, this is why we're here, right? We're here to talk about why OCM is important to business analysts. And it's not just important in one aspect of the process, it's important all the way through, from development through implementation and support. As we look at historically what OCM focused on, right? OCM focused on the people side of change, project management focused on the process. I think in my past, in a lot of organizational change or business process changes or organizational process changes, I noticed there's a lot of time spent on getting things very efficient. When we look at a whole business process, we're dissecting it into its individual parts, and we're trying to find those efficiencies, trying to find how things are different. And I think, especially in the past, when I was going through some larger projects, we really didn't think about the people. It was more about the process. And when we find those efficiencies, not really thinking through, can the people doing the job actually move through it in this way, right? We're looking at the best possible case scenario and not necessarily how that person fits in. So I guess my question now is, like, show of hands, has anybody been and worked through a process improvement activity where most of the attention was on how the business process worked, and we kind of set the people off over here until we were done? Does that happen to anybody? Thumbs up, hands up. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. I think I have an example of this, and a couple of them. It happened when I worked with Service Power, and it happened when I was involved in some call centers. And I'm just going to give 3 forces here. One is customer service, the other is quality. And then there's another one I'm going to bring in here in just a minute. But most places that deal with customers have these two forces going on, these two activities. There's time, you need time to deliver good customer service, but you also need time to create good quality through that process, documentation, validation that we're doing things correctly, something that could be maybe checked later to make sure that things were done correctly. Given an infinite amount of time, you can do both of those things very effectively together. However, what happens, especially call centers, areas where we need to get a lot done better, faster, more efficiently, you bring in efficiency, which creates this ball. Hopefully you all can see me on my camera, but it creates this ball, and efficiency puts pressure on that ball, which then creates choices, right? So as we increase the efficiency, right, we need to take care of things in a certain amount of time, or certain amount of time, or we need to create a whole lot of things within a period of time. You start making choices, and that individual that has to go through those business processes, now their choices become clearer and clearer as we give less and less time. So that individual is either going to dilute, give a little bit to customer service and a little bit to quality, or they're going to give it all to customer service and they're going to give it all to quality. And we're really putting the pressure for that individual to make the choice. What am I going to do today to serve this customer and the business? And so when we're looking at people equaling process, we have to factor that people piece in there and ask that question. Given all the things we talked about, can it even be done? Now, if it can't be done, what can we do to help the system in some way allow this to happen? Can we get efficiency to work in harmony with these other things? Because just having them individualized, I have customer service, I have quality, I have efficiency, they're all competing against each other, and it's not very effective. So if we want people to equal the process, we have to bring people into that conversation. Which is why, as a business analyst, when we're working with our SMEs and we're working with our vendors, talking about what current state is, looking towards future state, what is the system going to do to help us get there? And then identifying those business process changes so we can communicate that out to the folks that are going to be doing the job and articulating that. So I know we can't talk about OCM unless we bring some sort of model into it. I chose ADCAR because earlier this year, late last year, I went through the certification to be ProSci certified. So this is what I know, but they're all pretty similar. They're just a framework around helping people move through change. I really like this graphic because it shows it as a journey. It shows where people start and where people need to get to, and kind of what our goal is to get people to ability. So we're looking for awareness, desire, knowledge through ability, and to reinforcement. Now, the cool thing about this process and this model is that people start in this in different ways. If I have two individuals, one might start before awareness and some might start at desire because they've been doing the job for a really long time. And the other cool thing about this model is that we can identify that each individual can have this model running in different things. And just an example, like with our role, I might have someone that's working in the UI area that has the desire to go for the change, but they're before awareness of the paid family medical leave program because it's brand new and there's not a lot of information out there about it that's kind of come into like, how is this going to fit in? Like, we're working towards building that communication, but a lot of our staff are on the paid family medical leave side is they're more at the awareness, and they haven't quite hit desire yet because they don't quite know how it's going to fit into their life. So we can have one individual being in several different spots along the spectrum depending on what we're talking about. So how do we figure out where people are on this spectrum? Our program, we're using Readiness Survey. We've had one a few months ago or a couple months ago. We're going to kind of come into the beginning of next year and have another, and then right before we go live, have another, just so we can work with different areas to figure out where their staff are, where they need to go, where are people stuck along this spectrum, and it helps us drive our communication. How are we going to help people overcome these barriers along the way to get to the next step? Because we're not going to go right from awareness to ability. We kind of have to move through this spectrum to get where we need to go. One little example, our benefits area right now with the pandemic has gone through a massive amount of change. They've identified a lot of different areas that need to be improved, and they need to be improved quickly just because of volume and things that are coming through that are outside of their control. Now, a lot of that volume is kind of coming down because we're kind of, as further away we get from our record number of claims, right? Our volume's coming down, but the need is still there. And so they're asking, they're in that desire part. They're right in the area where like we need to do this, but they're also like, but what do we need to do to get ready? They need the knowledge piece. They need to kind of kick over to that area where it's like, okay, what can we do to prepare? What is this going to be like? And we're spending a lot of time with them reviewing their requirements, understanding, do we still have their requirements correct? Based on all the changes that they've gone through, and then working with them some activities to keep them focused and moving forward in different areas to help the next rollout go better, even better than this rollout's going. So even as we're preparing for the next change, we can work on where are people along this spectrum. And my hope is we're going to get a lot of people in our benefits to knowledge and ability fairly quickly because they really feel that need to change because their desire is so high. Technology again, sorry. There we go. So where do we start? We start with building our requirements. And this happens well before, this is like that planning phase of the process. And in our particular case, our RFP development and evaluation process were some of the most extensive and inclusive activities our agency's ever done. Before I moved into this role, I was in a role as a manager in our audit division or audit unit that went through this process. And it was really it was a big effort where our business analysts came into each area. We had brainstorming sessions. We had process maps sessions. We evaluated our business requirements and built them area by area, process by process, to make sure that we captured everything, all the way up to our big auditorium had these huge posters of all of our different process maps that were built, all blown up. And then each area sent representatives through to cross things out and move the lines to make sure that our process maps really represented what our agency looked like. And I think when we look at the bottom here, involving everyone, that's exactly what we did. And we tried, I would imagine, as I'm sitting here now thinking through all of our business process maps versus all of our design build conversations, we tried to leave no process unturned. And at the time it felt like we did, but now it's like, oh, we're learning more in our definition session. So I don't think we'll ever like get everything in one go, but we did a really extensive and thorough requirements building, and I think this is because there was a lot of time spent on that desire and awareness phase of our leaders, and we had total buy-in from our leaders that modernization is heading in this direction and we're going to do it right. And this planning phase really helped us get the support of leaders at all levels to make sure that we documented this correctly. I think that one of the more important aspects of building out requirements is really thinking future. Like people really know what they do today, and we can document what we do today, but it's really hard to step outside of that and think about, like, where are the pain points? Where do we want to go? What do we want the system to do? And as we go into the next slide, that's exactly in our current model is, or I'm sorry, our current model, our current project is getting our SMEs and our leaders and decision makers kind of going from what is today, because we really need to know what today is. We really need to describe what the current state is. I mean, we have it in requirements, we have it in process maps, but we want to do that in definition and understand, and then validate against what our requirements were, so we can really get what we want the system to do. But then going further and asking, what functionality do we want the system to have? Where are our pain points? I'll tell you, once you can get SMEs and business analysts that have done the work to really start talking about those pain points, like that's where we get the traction on that future. Like, what do we want the future of the system to do? So we can start documenting those business process changes, because as soon as we can identify, like if we can identify what that change is going to be in the meeting and start communicating that early, as we get later in this process, we're going to warm up to it, right? Like it might be like this really mind-blowing problem about and discussion, and maybe a little argument in there around the problem, but earlier we can start having that discussion, the earlier we can have those communications, the easier it's going to go as we start implementing these process changes. So what process changes are we talking about? A lot of our process changes are found in decision. Some are found, or a lot of them are also found in definition, in verification or business analyst testing, and then just conversations around future state. And every conversation that we try to have, we're really talking about that terminology automation. We're finding there's a lot of business changes that we're coming across where our new system is automating processes without having a lot of manual input. So those are going to be some business process change conversations that are coming. How are things being affected across units? Law changes, work queues. I think when we're looking for these impacts of our decisions, right? Because decisions drive a lot of these, but as we look through here, it really kind of talks about the other areas that we saw back here, right? When do we want to change terminology? Like we were having some discussion around the what we were going to call a date, and in our laws, a date is called a certain thing, and in the new system, it was called something else. And we had some discussion around, is that something that we want to change? And if not, we need to make sure that those align, because we want our language to be, our language is important. So like really getting down to, do we really want to make this change? Yeah. All right, and then we look at the impacts of our decision. I'll say my role revolves around this process of decision. I can listen and input and definition, but really as things get escalated to me, that's where I'm seeing a lot of these business process changes happen in my current role as a business team manager. Project decisions create process change. In nature, a decision is this point where we could go one way or we could go another, and we're working with business to identify what direction you want to go. Now, if you go, one way, it could be similar to what you've been doing in the past, or we could completely kind of change some things that could cause some communication efforts to need to be had. But when we get there to that point, there's going to be a lot of these little decision whys that we run into. And I think there's this this key that I'm finding is you don't want those decision-wise to contradict each other, right? As you're moving through this and you're making this business process change over here, but like 5 steps down, there's this other business process change that if we go right, or if we go down this road over here, it's going to really affect what this other decision is that we made. So there's these interdependencies that happen that we need to be aware of to make sure we're not creating conflicting business processes, which is really hard because we have all these different people working on a project, right? How do you get that communication to happen? And it's exactly what we're talking about, this idea of OCM and the importance that it has with business analysis, because we need to really think through all of these decisions, how they're going to affect the people doing the job, and understand where those dependencies and conflicts happen. So what are our consequences, positive and negative? This conflicting thing that could be a negative consequence of a decision. Understanding upstream, downstream, where the impacts are to units, one unit versus another. How if we change something in our accounting unit, does it change our front end team, like where we interact with our customers, right? Is it going to make it harder to explain something to somebody, or is it going to make it easier? Where do those intersecting points happen? Make decisions at the right level. I am so grateful for our decision-making process because it really kind of pulls the doesn't pull all of the conflict out. It pulls a lot of the conflict out. We should do this. We should do that. Well, if we ever get to that impasse, we have a next level to escalate those decisions to. And then if that group can't come to a decision, then there's another group and then another group, which really helps move the conversation forward and not get stuck. To get to that point where we're going to decide if this is going to be a business process change or not. One of the biggest things to look for is what do we want the system to do and to build for the future. Not building what we already have in a new system. Now, if we already have works, then great. We got functionality coming into the new system. But what if we move functionality from the old system to the new system? And we look out 10 years, is that still going to be what we want? Is there any expansion that could happen there? Any changes, any flexibility? And sometimes yes, sometimes no, but having that conversation is important so we can really think through what can the system do for us down the road. So we've decided something. Now what? And this seems pretty self-explanatory, right? We're going to communicate, we're going to test, and we're going to train. And I think the important part is communication. As soon as we've identified that process, making sure that people know about it. Because the earlier we start communicating those business process changes, the easier it's going to be to have those conversations down the road. Testing, obviously building scenarios, obtaining feedback, adjusting, retesting, communicating results. This is this loop of testing. We want to make sure that as we're making the decisions to, whatever that is going to impact customers, we need to test that because it's going to test the validity of our decisions. What happens if it's like, oh, this isn't working? We have a couple of different areas we're testing, right? Our business analysts test a lot of our system, but then it's going to go into our testing phase, kind of through our training phase. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for input, for iteration, for changes, retesting. Making sure that when we get to the end result, we have what we want. Now, obviously, there's still going to be iteration afterwards because what I'm finding is it's hard to catch everything. It's hard to find all the little things that can go wrong, or or like a lot of my conversations with my counterpart with our vendor is, are we missing anything? And how do we identify the things that we're missing so we don't? I think training's, in my mind, is one of the most, or not one of the most important, it is the most important thing as we get to the point where, because if we look at testing, like the business analysts are testing the system, then we move to our testing phase where a larger population is going to be testing our system, and then we're going to be training the entire population that's going to be using our system. And so this is our opportunity to build in that quality on the front end on how our system is going to work, and then also bring that feedback from that next population that gets to use the system. Because in training, we're going to get feedback from those folks that are going to be like, wow, why did you do that? Or this seems weird. Or, it's just even past that kind of mid-sized population of trainers. This is really where we're going to get our last, not our last feedback, because we're going to get feedback after we go live, but before go live, training and testing work together. This part of our job is so fun, is getting in and fiddling with the system. It really makes our business analysts that kind of SME of the new system, because we're working and testing all the different areas. We're bringing our SMEs in and we're giving demos. Early on in our project, we really pivoted our business analysts to be those trainers in our demos. Instead of relying on our vendor to do it, we really took that piece on to help have our agency folks showing how, in a very short period of time, we were able to learn the system and we can show you. And then it takes our business analysts kind of as that advocate, those ambassadors, to then talk to all the people that they know inside of our agency and kind of get them excited about it. And then we do the same thing here as we move into our testing phase with our SMEs and our testers, and just really trying to build them into being our ambassadors of the new system. The really cool thing, we've been having some meetings around functionality, and just people are excited, like, wow, this is really different, but pretty awesome. And so it's really cool to see that all the time we're spending in our system testing it and making sure that it's working properly, they can get translated into what we're seeing kind of at a global level as the different pieces come together. It's pretty cool. So training development, looking at getting people in that system early and often. The earlier we can get people interacting with the system, the easier it's going to be to get to that ability stage of ADKAR. I learn differently, and here as we go through the different ways people learn, I love getting in and fiddling it with a system and just trying to figure out how it works, and then I can just bring the material in as I kind of get stuck. I'm not a sit at the computer and read everything step by step and then try to do it. Mess it up every time. So I think when we get to watching videos and reading material, and even in as we have our SMEs coming in and we're talking in our different meetings, we're kind of telling them how it works and showing them how it works. But until they can actually click the button and move the thing and try to put in a wage report on our side, or whatever, anything that happened with another agency, until they can start doing that themselves and seeing how the system interacts with each other, it's all just that knowledge stage. Moving to ability is practicing, practice until that becomes their new skill set. Using business people to be trainers through a train-a-trainer approach can speed up that formal training, because we have folks with business knowledge and teaching is a great way to learn yourself. I like to think of how people learn. I learn best with messing with things on my own. Some people learn great in person, other people work online, workshops, just different ways, and just ask. I just like this thinking through. I'm not gonna ask everybody to answer or anything, but like, how do you learn best, right? Are you a reader and apply? Or you watch a video and apply? I am a YouTube nut. I like to go and learn things and then try to do it. Woodworking and things like that. If I can watch somebody do it, I can recreate that. Maybe not as good as that person, but that's where that practice comes in. But figuring out how adults learn and then using those approaches is so important to getting people moving towards that ability stage. This part, I think, is like internal, external stakeholders, really getting that input of the users, the people that are going to be in the system, is kind of where we're going to be able to iterate and make the system kind of be what we want it to be. Now, inside of our area, our internal stakeholders, those are our UI tax, our unemployment insurance tax, our paid family medical leave insurance contributions, UI or unemployment insurance benefits, paid family benefits. But we have all these like peripheral folks that kind of interact with all of these systems, and that's our accounting departments, our research departments, our IT departments, our like all of our stakeholders, our workforce operations folks, our business services areas interacting with our system, and how all those pieces interact together. Still need to find out what their pain points are, to figure out where their requirements lie in, and then implement, again, building for the future. A lot of these discussions that we're having over the last several months, we've had kickoff meetings with all of our interface partners, both internal and external, to really find out what these what the system does today, what the pain points are, to see if there's anything that we could enhance, if there's time to do that before our rollouts, or looking towards the future, what things we could change to make the system work better. But it goes through the same approach as our other meetings, is that build for the future. We're going to gather input, ask questions, test those things, still incorporate feedback, and then iterate along the way. Our external stakeholders work a little different than our internal stakeholders. Our external partner agencies, like as far as the Department of Revenue, U.S. Department of Labor, Department of CBS, Consumer Business Services, acronyms, Secretary of State. These are folks that we work with very closely, but we also work closely with a lot of other big employers, big employer groups, community partners, all of those areas. So we have some different approaches there. Our external partner engagement looks a little different. It's a 3-tiered approach. First, starting with our surveys going out to those employers starting in January of 22. Our focus groups are going to allow for both virtual and in person, and provide demonstrations and get feedback based on those demonstrations. And that's going to start happening for our project in March of 22. And the really cool one is the Stakeholder Sandbox, to provide that hands-on practice. And I think that part's going to get us so much great feedback when we're getting through our testing phase, is to allow those employers and invite employers to participate in that hands-on approach with support, right? Because they're going to come, to our facility, or we're going to work with them remotely, but we're going to have those trainers available to be able to work with them to kind of get that feedback. We're definitely working and wanting to take a very inclusive and broad approach to get participation, looking at engaging our paid family medical leave insurance stakeholders, our UI modernization committees, our small business advocacy groups. We're really looking to work with underserved, under-resourced, and marginalized populations. We want to work with our large, what we call TPAs, our large payroll companies, large influential employers, our tribal governments, and more. Just as a short list for this presentation. But we're really wanting to engage a lot of different communities to really understand how our software is going to work with Oregonians. So feedback from our stakeholders. Listening is so hard sometimes, because I think it's when folks give us feedback, it's not because they're happy, it's because something's not working usually, or something's not going well, and it's hard to not try to have that conversation, but just to sit and listen and understand what those pain points are, it's pretty difficult. It's important because the pain points are if we can break down those barriers of pain points along the way, it's really going to help us build a system that is going to be inclusive, that is going to be easy and intuitive. And that's for our project, we're really looking for that, so people can easily function with our agency and get the benefits that they need. I want to build for the future. I like this. It's if you don't ask people what they want, they'll build what they have, and that's what I observe. We've, in the early parts of our definition, really talked a lot about what the system does today, and it's taken a lot of work to get people in this mindset of, but what do we not want it to do it's doing now, and what do we want it to do in the new system, and is this possible? And giving that feedback and trying to get people in a mindset of the future. But each time we've identified something that needs to change, that's something that we need to communicate, and that's where that OCM and business analyst role sort of come together, is we're really trying to dig out those business process changes so we can get the system that we want. And there's a lot of times that we can't say yes. And sometimes it's okay to say no, but sometimes it's not a real no. Sometimes it's just a no right now. No, not right now. And that's hard, right? Because when we identify that there is this pain point and we want to do something about it, but maybe there's a law change that needs to happen, or maybe there's this other big process that needs to happen. And that really gets it down to that, no, not right now. So maybe we need to get this for a future update. But if we're starting to have the conversations, we can start putting together what our future and our future system looks like.
Hey, Brad.
Yep.
A couple questions popped up in the chat.
Cool.
Related to that last slide. So I don't know if you want to address those now.
Sure.
Okay. Is it pronounced Tamara? Hopefully I'm getting your name right. What was your process to get external stakeholder input and pain points?
Yeah, I'd say I can't speak to what our process was because we're right in the middle of it. But let me go back to this slide. And this is the process that we're going to use is first we're going to survey and solicit feedback from customers, asking them what those pain points are, or what things they're wanting to look for in our system. Then our focus groups are going to move into kind of either in person or virtually and providing demonstrations to get back, kind of finding out based on what you saw, what did you like? More importantly, what did you not like? Because we really we need to know the not like part so we can make some iterations and adjustments. But I think the one that's going to get us a lot of really great feedback and understand how we can even how we can adjust the system even better is this stakeholder sandbox. Is allowing our external partners to kind of play with the system. And when I say external partners, these are the ones that interact with our system in some way, not just connecting. We're going to test our IT interfaces and those sorts of things along the way. But when we're looking for external stakeholder feedback, we're really focusing on just in this list that I had, our paid family medical leave insurance stakeholders, our small business advocacy groups, our large payroll services, our influential employers, our tribal governments. We're really wanting to kind of have a diverse population go through these three tiers.
Cool. And Tamara had a couple of follow-up questions kind of along a little bit more of the details there. One, I'll try to sum up a couple of those. If you have a plan that you'd be willing to share, or if you're willing to share the survey, Tamara's definitely interested in that. And then she also asked if you guys considered the people who apply for unemployment. And then her last follow-up question was, how far in advance of implementation will you release the sandbox?
Yeah, so I can, since I'm on this slide, I'll speak to the sandbox. We are looking to, so we're looking to do the survey in January of 2022 for rollout one. This is UI tax and paid family leave contributions. So we're going to start the surveying in January of 22. We're going to start the focus groups in March of 22 and the sandbox in May of 22. And then our go live is in September of 22. That would be the expansion or the timeline there. As far as folks signing up for benefits, that is our rollout 2. So we will do similar processes as we move into rollout 2, where we're working specifically with our UI benefits department and our our paid family medical leave insurance benefits units. Then what was the other question? Sorry.
Let's see, that was the sandbox. Oh, if you're willing to share the plan in the survey.
I don't know. My contact information will be at the end of this. If you wanted to jot that down and shoot me an email, then I can follow up with our communications team and see when and if we can do that. Cool. Any other questions?
I don't see any in the chat. Tamara did say thanks, very helpful.
All right. So kind of the next part of this, I think this is super important because, and I guess I'll ask for once I'm kind of through the explanation of the dip, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory here. The dip happens on every change we do, right? Sometimes it's a little dip, sometimes it's a big dip, right? And it does come into our OCM efforts and how much work we kind of put into getting people ready to implement the change. But the dip happens, and it's like our system is stable over here in our old system. And it's been, in some aspects, our unemployment insurance system has been stable for a really long time. Now we can argue that like where it's stabilized and if that's good or bad, but it is stable in some capacity, and it's kind of squeezed out all the efficiency that it can get. And then we're going to modernize, and the expectation is we're going to go into that new system, and there's going to be all these new efficiencies and these new things that are going to help us be more productive and better and faster, and just, you know, things are going to work smoothly. But reality is it's going to go through this, right? Things must be learned, things must be unlearned, structures must be brought to life, processes practiced, competencies acquired, patterns of behavior cultivated, and ultimately there needs to be time for the new system to stabilize into what it's going to be. So a lot of times when you move from an old system that has eked out all that efficiency out of it, and you move into the new system that's brand new, a lot of times you're going to take that step back. You're going to go through that dip, right? Where production isn't going to be as good, but the future is bright, right? Like as long as the mindset's there that we are unlearning and learning new things, and the system is going to stabilize into something that is better, but we need to go through that dip to get to the good stuff. So I just thought that is relevant to this, because no matter how much analysis and OCM efforts that we have, we're all going to feel the dip. And then my conclusion, you can separate the people from the process, or I'm sorry, you can't separate the people from the process. We need to involve people doing the work in all parts of implementation. We need to build for the future. And as far as OCM, we need to communicate. That's all I got. Questions?
Yep, one question just popped in there. Another one from Tamara. Are any of the staff worried about job loss because of efficiencies?
I think on any new project or new system changes, I think that's inherent to what we all do, right? And we have a lot of legacy systems that are very manual processes, and we are talking about moving into something that has some automated function. Now, in our design and build of this, there are still some manual things that have to happen. Like, there's a lot of manual things that have to happen, even in a new modernized system, because people need to put eyes on those things. And the communication around the new system is, yes, there's going to be efficiencies, but once that automation efficiencies happen, there's still work to do, right? Like, instead of spending most of your time on all these manual processes, now we can pivot and spend some more time on other things that maybe we couldn't get to in the past because we had all this other work to do. So yes, there are people in their current jobs that are worried about job loss due to efficiencies, but our message as an organization is, due to modernization, there won't be any job loss because we still have a lot of work to do, and it just might look different when we're done.
All right, any other questions? And I will comment that Lisa Martinez is attending today, and she's willing to talk about what we did at ODOT around that staff worry piece about, jobs going away because of gained efficiencies and how we dealt with that there, if anyone's interested in that. And then Tamara asked if you could share a little bit more detail about your decision-making process and those different tiers that you talked about earlier, Brad.
So I think it's when we're looking at a decision-making process, it really is, as we identify decisions that need to be made, we have plans kind of spelling out the different the different areas that different groups should be able to make decisions, and ours goes, business analyst SMEs or business area SMEs. Then it goes to a higher level management group. It's called our operations and policy team. And then it goes to our sponsors, and then it goes to our executive team, depending on the decision and how it impacts either budget or scope or those higher level budget scope stuff's going to go to the exec team. More of the decisions that cross spans our lines of business are going to go to the sponsors, and then our operations and policy teams are going to talk more about decisions that are impacted. Like we're just at that level where we need an escalation to another group, and that group has a wide range of leaders in it to be able to help make decisions. So as far as tiers are concerned, it would just be level, like hierarchy of decision makers.
That sounds pretty similar to how we had it set up at DMV. All right, any other questions for Brad? Otherwise, we might just finish early this forum. I don't think we've done that too often yet. So I'll give another minute or so, see if any questions roll in, and then if not, I'll go ahead and close this out. And I'll take the minute while folks might be typing to thank you again, Brad, for your willingness to put this together in the midst of your modernization program going on and happening, and all of the work that I know is involved in that, having just gone through similar work at DMV. So thank you very much. This was a meaningful presentation and really good stuff about incorporating our BA work and our BA methodologies and ways of thinking with OCM. Yep, I'm just seeing a bunch of thank yous coming through. They can type thank you pretty quick. All right, so I will go ahead and steal the presenter from you. Hopefully you folks got Brad's contact information there. If not, the slides will be up on the Bang website as usual, and the recording of today, for any of you that weren't able to catch the whole thing, or maybe you just want to watch it again, the recording will be up eventually on our YouTube page. It takes us a little while to get that up there. Oh, and Brad just put his email in the chat as well if you wanted to contact him. And so in February, when we come back together, we're going to have Lisa Martinez and Karis Alston, both change management experts in the field there. I've had the chance to work with both of them in my time at ODOT. So looking forward to hearing from them. Tentative topic title is Preparing Your Organization for Change. So they're going to kind of connect a lot of the dots between these first two parts of our change management series and hopefully give us a real nice closeout in February. Not hopefully, they will. I've seen both of them speak before and they're going to do great. So please join us for that. I know you'll get good stuff out of it, just like you have these first two parts. I know I have, and that is all we've got for y'all today. So have a good holiday season, whatever your holiday celebrations entail. I hope you have fun and safe celebrations. Thank you all.